The United States has begun a Trump-led blockade of the Iranian ports. This is around the Strait of Hormuz. This comes after the peace talks did not deliver peace or a breakthrough. Vice President Vance, of course, had led those talks over the weekend for the United States side. Those talks were seen by Donald Trump as a potential off-ramp when he didn't get what he wanted after his threats, if you remember all that last week, and there was a ceasefire to lead to the talks. Well, now we have more than 15 U.S. warships in place. They are operating to prevent ships from leaving or entering. We are kind of doing a version of what Iran is doing, a point that has been observed by many experts wondering where exactly this all leads. Indeed, you don't have to have a satirical website like The Onion or wait for the late night comics to get a hold of this tonight, because mainstream outlets and foreign policy experts are already calling it something that might have occurred to you as someone who follows the news or this war. They're calling it Trump's blockade of a blockade, because the issue that had spiked prices and caused so much pain for the U.S., putting pressure on Trump's policy, was that Iran was already blockading most ships from moving through this same body of water, this strait. The U.S. now doing it. Remember, it's not exactly our backyard, and given the history and us choosing to bomb Iran, this does play out as an escalation because the U.S. is stepping up to block everything there. Trump wants other countries to join in, but the president who started this war without allies apparently will be waging parts of this war without allies. The Times reporting there are no takers for that mission as of tonight. Trump's patience may be wearing thin. The administration is also looking at limited strikes as a way to break a stalemate. That's from the Wall Street Journal. The blockade bringing U.S. ships into striking distance of Iran's missiles and drones. And that raises the risk where American military are now in harm's way. Our personnel are out there. We're close to Iran. The fact that we have limited their ability to hit us on the home front over in the U.S. and near the continental U.S. is not comfort when we are now operating there. Experts also describe this as a kind of game of chicken where Iran would seem to have an upper hand because, and this is partly a criticism of the Iranian government and its failures, but the fact is Iran and its people have endured a lot more pain, economic and otherwise, than the American public. And so the Times says if this is a showdown over who can endure more pain, Donald Trump's policies and the American economy may not be set up for success there. Also, this will increase oil prices rise and it will deepen the drag on the global economy. Remember, before the blockade, oil was spiking again. It's been around $100 per barrel. A lot of the positives that we've seen in the energy markets involve the assumption, or call it a hope, that Donald Trump will not wage this war for months on end. But the way he's acting, the way he's escalating, and the erratic behavior, which some of his own allies and former aides say reflects an untenable mental decline for the sitting president. That's me quoting them. We can get over to the independent experts or the critics or the doctors, but we've had Trump allies speaking out, and another story from the Times crossing on that point today. Well, that erraticism, that unreliability of the commander-in-chief does conflict with the market's best hope that this will just work itself out. As for the price of oil heading up, Donald Trump, who on his better political days, if you look at the last, say, 10 years, has been at times an effective communicator or really a kind of resilient liar, someone who just says what needs to be said for political purposes. That Donald Trump is fading into one who courts blasphemy debates and upsets the Christian population of the United States and around the world, and upsets the Muslim population around the world, and just does things that aren't adding up very straight. So I say that by way of introduction to the president's answer on Fox News about whether the price of oil will go up and stay up heading into the midterms.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
I hope so. I mean, I think so. It could be. It could be or the same or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same.
A little bit higher is not what the host was looking for. You can see Maria's eyebrows literally raised as she watches a president commit what is a gaffe. Of course, a phone call where he admits that his policies are driving up prices on Americans, which breaks his campaign promises, is only one of several gaffes, errors, or outright failures affecting America. Indeed, if this were the only thing, and this were a different political era, a president saying that that they raise gas prices and they're going to go up even higher by the next election, that itself would be its own big thing. But we have to pick among that and the many other scandals and problems dogging Donald Trump. Anger over the war and the higher prices are part of why Republicans have been retiring. Now, that's not always the most fascinating story, right? You have to be kind of a news or politics junkie to keep track and care about a retirement rate in Congress going up or down. But we reported, as did others, about that because that was one of those clear indicators that some Republican incumbents who already have the job basically are sure they would lose it and would rather not lose it. They'd rather say they're retiring and go work on their next job or their lobbyist offers in D.C., that kind of thing. That is the context for what the Republicans who are still running are facing if they're willing to talk to Republican voters, not all voters, just in red districts, incumbent Republicans and other candidates facing these kind of scenes.
As the conflict in the Middle East comes to an end, you're going to see oil prices come back down. The fact is that the president is well within his authority to conduct the strikes that have been conducted. Donald Trump won the election.
The Republican Party and you are enabling him. You're all cowards.
That's just a sample of that Republican being addressed as a, quote, coward. And credit to those willing to face voters, which is what you're supposed to do if you're in office. At least he's trying to talk to them. The even larger, quote, cowards, if you buy that critique, would be the ones ducking altogether. But what you see there in just the moment we showed you is the talking point of the party is that oil prices are going down, not up. Donald Trump just contradicted that claim. The war is unpopular, obviously. And the way that Republicans are trying to stand with Donald Trump's claims, delusions, and propaganda about a war that clearly was chosen by this administration and is raising prices and has not worked and now involves tonight a greater commitment of troops in harm's way and ships in harm's way in Iran to do the blockading that Iran was already doing doesn't make a lot of sense. You can look at the polling, and majority of the country says they're angry about this war, 57%. A larger group says stressed. And if you just ask people if they're worried, well, that's a huge, huge number, 68%. That includes, by definition, statistically, a lot of people who have voted for Trump in the past. That is the scene we face as we bring in our experts on the politics. We have Jason Johnson, MS Now political contributor and professor. And on the national security front, Brian Katulis has worked with the NSC, the State Department, and DOD. He is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. Welcome to both of you. Jason, we'll get to you on the politics. I don't think it's the hardest questions you face tonight. Why GOP politics bad? Why voters angry? That kind of thing. Brian, we'll start with you on the more serious footing, which is what does a blockade of a blockade mean, and what is the outlook in the region?
All right. Thanks for having me on. Let's be straight here. This problem that Donald Trump's trying to fix in the Strait of Hormuz was a problem that did not exist on February 27th before he launched the war. And that's a key problem here and a key issue. He keeps on using military tactics and our most precious national security resources, which are our men and women in uniform, and putting them in harm's way without a strategy. We essentially have strikes without strategy, or in this instance, an operation we don't know that it'll work. And that's driving up prices at the gas pump and at the grocery store for all of us. And the real risk here, you mentioned he's the commander-in-chief. He's also just an improv performer-in-chief. He's sort of making things up as he goes along. In part, if you remember before the war and in the early days, he couldn't really articulate a clear end goal and objective. It was like a game of three-card Monte. It was ever shifting the goalposts, and he continues to do that. And that's a risky situation going back to the troops that are in the field right now, that you can't just solve this with tactics. You need smart diplomacy, which is not what we had on display in Islamabad this past weekend.
Right.
Jason?
So here's the thing. Blocking a blockade, it's a hat on a hat. It doesn't make sense. You can make an economic argument, right? Because Iran for the last month has been charging people to get to the Strait of Hormuz. They're charging people like $2 million, and maybe they were going to put the price up. But here's the thing. You could charge $1 million, $2 million, $3 million for it. Doesn't matter. At some point, somebody needs to tell Donald Trump, you don't know what you're doing. And he keeps trying to shift things back and forth. And the problem is there are people who are willing to pay the price to get through Iran's blockade that are going to be frustrated by our blockade on top of that blockade. So it is an absolute mess of strategy and makes absolutely no sense. And it has damages not just in this country, but the global economy.
Brian, here's what the president said about it today.
Mr. President, as far as the naval blockade is concerned, what's the end game? Is it to force Iran back to the negotiating table? Is it to open up the strait so that gas prices ultimately come down?
Maybe everything. I mean, both of those things, certainly, and more.
Brian, it gives you the echoes of sort of the real estate deal guy, the tycoon, the build the wall, the reality show. It's this, it's that, it's more. But all of this is being tested in reality in the days ahead. I mean, how long can he blockade a blockade? And if he doesn't get Iran to give in, which the Times and others are saying is tough, then what?
Yeah. So before I get back to the blockade on the blockade, just remember a few short days ago, President Trump suggested that we might be collecting tolls with the Iranian regime, an Ayatollah booth, I call it, or a piracy pact between the United States and Iran, which nobody on his team, I think, was prepared when those words came out of his mouth. Flash forward to today, what I'm most worried about as somebody who lived in the region, worked on it for 30 years, is we're putting our sailors and soldiers in harm's way. And what I'm watching is whether, there's any reaction from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is the most dangerous force in the region. And then B, whether this actually produces results, right? The straits are not open. They've not been for a month and a half. And the longer they stay closed, it's going to be costlier for all of us.